We were looking for an exhibit that really celebrated African-American art, and we looked to Kalamazoo Institute of the Arts and knew about their collection and heard that this exhibit was going to be available for a traveling exhibition, and we thought it was a great opportunity to bring it to Bakersfield.
It's an awesome exhibit. There's Romare Bearden, there's James Van Der Zee. There are really big artists in the African-American art world who are here in the Bakersfield Museum of Art. And I think that a lot of people in the community have no concept of how amazing this exhibit is. And it would be my hope that everyone could come and see it. I think that this should be a school field trip, and every African-American child in Bakersfield should have an opportunity to see this exhibit. The school districts don't have that kind of money, and it's not going to happen, but I think it is such an important exhibit that it should be given that type of status.
Honestly, some of the pieces really kind of take me back in time, and it takes me to a really emotional place. There were some pieces that I saw. There was a piece in particular, a young man, a photograph, and it was entitled Hip Hop, and he's standing there and he's this young, clearly streetwise kid, and I look at him and I think about the time that I was 22 years old, right out of school, and I was living in Chicago, and I would go and tutor inner city kids and work with young men just like him and help tutor them and teach them how to read and do math, and so each piece really speaks to me. It takes me back to another time and place, even though some of the events that are depicted through these pictures happened before me. There's a meaning for me because they happened during my father's time, or they happened during my mother's time, or my grandparents' time, and again, through the relevance of storytelling, I'm able to experience that point in time through their eyes. And so some of these pieces really kind of speak to me and take me to another place, and it's just a phenomenal exhibit. And I would strongly recommend anyone to come and bring your kids, bring your family, and really come experience a piece of our history.
You have everything from photography to sculpture to printmaking, and really celebrating some prominent African-American artists, and that really spoke to me as a curator.
As a lawyer here in Kern County, when I first started 23 years ago, there were not many African-American women practicing here. I was 27 years old. I looked like I was not yet 20. And I think that was one of the things that contributed to some inequality, was the perception that I was very young, and due to my youth I did not have much to contribute. I think that in a lot of ways I was insulated from some discrimination because I worked at a firm of partners who were not racial minorities. And so I was somewhat insulated and protected from being beat up amongst my colleagues when I would go into court and litigate. But certainly, those are issues that growing up in America as a female and as an African-American female, I was certainly aware of. And had experiences that would remind me that not everyone saw me as an equal.
For me, I am my family's legacy, and so I carry all of that with me as a part of who I am and as a part of my own learning experience. And I use the lessons learned from my family as I look through some of these pieces. Some of these pieces really do take me back, and through the lens of my family's eyes, through the lens of my parents' eyes. My father grew up in the South in the 50s, so he did grow up in the Jim Crow South, and that really shaped and molded, those experiences really shaped and molded who he was. And I think, he passed some of those lessons along to me in terms of how to treat people equally and treat people kindly. I just feel like the lessons that my parents learned helped me to be a better person and helped me to have better coping skills in terms of dealing with some of those issues in my life.
My experience with this exhibit was seeing it on thumbnail images and very small scale reproductions of the work. So it really makes a huge impact when you're able to physically see the work in person, be in front of, you know, a James Van der Zee photograph, and actually you get to have that experience with the artwork when it's right in front of you.
My children are 9 and 7, and I don't have to have the same types of racial conversations with them that my parents had to have with me. When we were growing up, I grew up in Denver, Colorado, a suburb, Aurora, Colorado is where I'm from, and we integrated our neighborhood. And I tell people that if you can believe, in the 80s, this was in the 80s, that people actually signed petitions and had organized movements to keep us out of the neighborhood. They didn't want to have an African American family in the neighborhood. That's pretty deep to deal with when you're 7 and 8 years old, you know, to have to kind of figure out how to navigate that landscape. And my parents really had to help us move through all of that. I don't have to have those conversations with my kids. They are not necessarily integrating their schools or integrating their neighborhoods. So the stories that I tell are a little bit different, but I still want them to have a sense of their history and you know, the sacrifice and struggles that, you know, their ancestors before them you know, gave so that they could have a better life.
My dad used storytelling as a way of teaching us that, you know, money doesn't grow on trees. When we went to get bikes, he made sure that my sisters and I knew that his first bike he had to earn by helping his parents pick cotton one summer, and that they promised he and his brother a bike, and that when they got a bike, they got one bike and they both had to share the bike. And so he was letting us know that even though we were buying 3 bicycles that day, that was not his experience, and that he wanted to make sure that we understood that we were in a more privileged environment and that we appreciated the things that our parents were able to do for us, because they were things that their parents were not able to do for them. And so I think in telling the stories and my parents and grandparents to us, it gave us a greater sense of where we were in life, who we were, and it gave us more respect for them, and it gave us an awareness of how fortunate we were growing up.
It's great that we've had so many people to be able to walk through this room and this gallery and really be moved by, you know, the cultural and social impact.
I do believe in giving back. I do believe in helping others. It's something that I've done all of my life, from middle school, participating in student government and food drives, and through high school, through college, you know, protesting in front of Bank of America against South Africa is just a part of who I am. And as a result of that, it has led me to be in different positions where I am a leader. But it's not something specifically that I have sought out. I would consider it an honor and a privilege to be considered a leader. I probably could do more than I do, but at times I'm selfish because I have a family of my own. But I do think it's very important because I am in a position where I can help others. And so I do choose to use my resources at times to do that. And I think that there are a lot of other people in my position who should also feel obligated to contribute to our community here.
I am absolutely honored and proud to be considered a community leader. It was never necessarily my goal. What my goal has always been to just be a good person and to give back to the community in which I live. I mean, that was really, even now I tell my kids, you are a part of a community, and so that means you have to contribute. Now, of course, that's relative to them picking up their rooms and cleaning up their toys, because their community at this young age is our home. But to me, that's a part of instilling in them the message that you are a part of the community and that you need to give back to the community that you live in. And that has always been really the cornerstone of who I've been, and you know, my parents were both very active in the community because, you know, that's important. And it's not just the African American community, it's the community at large. I'm a part of this community, and so I have a responsibility to give back and to be a voice when I can.
So these are a series of screen prints by Jacob Lawrence. There are 22 prints in this series that illustrate a story about John Brown, who was an abolitionist. So you start with the first panel, and it's told in a sequential story, and walking through it, you really get a sense to piece together the story and legend of John Brown. And Jacob Lawrence is known for his dynamic shapes, what he called dynamic cubism, but his very geometric forms that are very dynamic and help illustrate the story and can be very impactful.
What's important to me in terms of how I want to be remembered, I want to be remembered as somebody who gave back to the community. And I'll kind of share a very personal story with you that I've shared before. When I was in college, my parents, I came from a middle-class background, and both my parents were working, but it was a really tough economic time, and my parents had both of us in school. And at the time I worked for an ad agency. I was I was working as an intern at a black-owned ad agency, and it was just a tough financial time. And I remember at the end of the summer, my boss called me into his office and he said, "I want to give you something," and he handed me 2 envelopes. And he said, "The first envelope is for you to use however you wish. It's a summer bonus," and it was a check for $500. And the second envelope was a check for $5,000, and he said, "This is for your tuition for the semester." And I just broke down in tears, and I remember saying to him, "How can I ever repay you for this?" Like, I knew that my parents really, they had 2 kids in school at the same time. That was a huge gift. And I said, I don't know how I can ever repay you. And he said, "Always remember that there's another Danielle behind you." He said, "That's how you repay me. You have to reach back and help other people along." So for me, how I want to be remembered is, I want to be remembered as a person who has been granted phenomenal opportunities, that I've done the very best that I can with them, that I've made those people who have opened doors for me proud. But I really want to be remembered as the person that reaches back and helps pull other people through the door along with me.
I'd like for people to think of me as an honest person, to say that I'm fair, that I'm a hard worker, but in terms of my legacy, I'm not sure about that one.
We have such a great opportunity to be hosting this exhibit, and there are some very prominent artists that are featured in this exhibition, so I think it's a real treat to be able to come here and see work from Jacob Lawrence, Romare Bearden, and to really get a sense of the magnitude of this collection and the diversity of the artwork here. It does span 80 years of African American art, so it really explores this history, and not only African American history, but history. So you get to see, photographs from civil rights movement, personal artwork that is just really sort of more emotionally engaging. And we have over 60 pieces of artwork here, celebrated by 30 different artists. So there really is a great variety. So I think there is going to be something for everyone.